Welcome back to Artificial Fluency, your weekly deep dive into the fascinating world of AI, technology, and their impact on society. I'm your host, John Martinez, and with me today is our brilliant co-host, AI Emma. Emma, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, John. There's so much to unpack today, from groundbreaking AI developments to the fascinating dynamics in both the tech and political spheres. I've been particularly intrigued by the latest developments in quantum computing.
We've got a packed show today, and I'm excited to dive into these topics with you. Before we jump in, just a reminder to our listeners, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Now, Emma, let's start with what's probably the biggest tech story of the week, OpenAI's latest breakthrough in multimodal AI systems.
Absolutely, John. What's particularly fascinating about this development is how it's fundamentally different from previous AI models. We're seeing systems that can now understand and generate content across text, images, and even 3D spaces simultaneously. This isn't just an incremental improvement. It's potentially a paradigm shift in how AI interfaces with our world.
Speaking of AI and tech leaders, we can't ignore Elon Musk's recent moves in this space. His XAI company has been making waves with their approach to AI development. What's your take on how this fits into the broader AI landscape?
John, what's interesting about Musk's approach is how it differs from his competitors. While companies like OpenAI and Google DeepMind are focusing on general-purpose AI systems, Musk seems to be pursuing a more specialized direction, particularly in areas that could integrate with his other ventures like Tesla and SpaceX.
Right, and speaking of Tesla, their recent announcements about advanced driver assistance systems have been generating quite a buzz. Do you think this could be a game changer for the automotive industry?
Well, John, Tesla's new approach to computer vision and sensor fusion is certainly innovative. They're essentially creating a neural network that learns from millions of real-world driving scenarios. But what really catches my attention is how this technology might impact urban planning and infrastructure development.
Let's shift gears a bit and talk about the political landscape, particularly how technology is influencing political discourse. We've seen unprecedented levels of AI-generated content in political campaigns.
This is crucial, John. The intersection of AI and politics is becoming increasingly complex. We're seeing everything from deepfake videos to AI-generated campaign messages. It raises important questions about authenticity and trust in political communication.
You're right, Emma. And speaking of politics, the current political climate has been particularly intense. The role of social media platforms in shaping political narratives has evolved significantly. How do you see this affecting the future of democratic discourse?
It's a fascinating evolution, John. Social media platforms are now implementing more sophisticated content moderation systems, using AI to detect misinformation while trying to balance free speech concerns. But what's really interesting is how users are adapting to these changes.
And this brings us to our next topic, the future of America in this rapidly evolving technological landscape. How do you see these various elements, AI, social media, political polarization, shaping the next decade?
That's a complex question, John. I see several key trends converging. First, we're likely to see increased integration of AI in everyday life, from healthcare to education. Second, the nature of work is fundamentally changing. Remote work and AI automation are reshaping the job market. But perhaps most importantly, we're seeing a shift in how Americans engage with technology and information.
Let's break that down a bit. What specific changes do you anticipate in sectors like education and healthcare?
Well, take education, for example. We're already seeing personalized learning platforms that adapt to individual student needs. In healthcare, AI-driven diagnostics and telemedicine are becoming mainstream. But what's really exciting is how these technologies might help address inequalities in access to these services.
Welcome back, listeners. We're discussing the future of America with AI Emma. Emma, before the break, you mentioned inequality. How do you see technology either helping or potentially exacerbating current social divisions?
That's a critical question, John. Technology has this dual nature. It can either bridge or widen gaps. Take broadband access, for instance. While we're seeing initiatives to expand internet access to rural areas, we're simultaneously developing technologies that might require even more sophisticated infrastructure, potentially leaving some communities further behind.
Interesting point. And how does this tie into economic development and job creation?
Well, we're seeing a fascinating shift in the job market. While some traditional jobs are being automated, we're also seeing the emergence of entirely new industries. For instance, the growing field of AI ethics and governance, or the expansion of renewable energy technology sectors. These changes are creating new opportunities, but also requiring significant workforce adaptation.
Let's talk about infrastructure. How do you see America's cities evolving in response to these technological changes?
Cities are becoming smarter, John. We're seeing the integration of IoT devices for everything from traffic management to energy efficiency. But what's really exciting is how this might improve quality of life. Imagine AI systems optimizing public transportation in real time, or smart grids reducing energy waste and costs.
Time for our lightning round, Emma. Quick predictions. What's one major change you expect to see in America by 2030?
I believe we'll see a fundamental shift in how we think about education and work. Traditional four-year degrees might give way to more flexible, technology-enabled learning paths, with continuous education becoming the norm rather than the exception.
And what about the role of social media and information sharing?
We'll likely see a move toward more decentralized, blockchain-based social platforms, with greater user control over data and more sophisticated tools for verifying information authenticity.
Any final thoughts on the intersection of technology and democracy?
I believe we'll see the emergence of new forms of civic engagement, enabled by technology but grounded in human values. The key will be finding ways to use technology to strengthen, rather than replace, human connection and democratic discourse.
This has been a fascinating discussion, Emma. Before we wrap up, let's remind our listeners about next week's episode.
Yes. Next week, we'll be diving deep into the environmental impact of AI and exploring green tech innovations. It's going to be another exciting conversation.
Thanks for joining us today, listeners. This has been Artificial Fluency. I'm John Martinez.
And I'm AI Emma. Stay curious, stay informed, and we'll see you next week.